Hello, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to solve rational equations, okay? So now, how do we solve rational equations? I will say step one, always identify the restrictions. Okay, basically, you want to figure out what number will make the denominator equal to 0, okay? So what number will make the denominator equal to 0? So the only number that will make the denominator equal to 0 is going to be 7. Because when you do 7 minus 7, you get 0. Okay, and again, you cannot have a number divided by 0. It's undefined. And the 2 is a constant. It's going to still remain 2 no matter what, since there's no variable x next to it. Okay, so the restriction is going to be, so how do we find the restrictions? Okay. So to find the restriction, you take the denominator, which is x minus 7, and you set equal to 0, not equal to 0. Again, we do not want the denominator to be equal to 0. So you want to find out the numbers. What is the number that will make the denominator equal to 0? And that number is 7. So how do I know that? Because to undo negative 7, we add 7 on both sides. So we know now that x cannot be equal to 7. Okay, that's a restriction. So I have to make sure as I solve the rational equation. So if I end up with x equal to 7, okay, and we know that a restriction, the x cannot be 7, so I can conclude that there's no solution. Okay, so let's see, let's solve. Now to solve the quadratic, to solve the rational equation, it's the same as it's the same as adding or subtracting a fraction with unlike denominator. Okay, you notice here that you have different denominators, so you have to make it the same in order to add the fractions or the rational expression. So I have two different denominators. The first one is x minus 1, and the second denominator is 2. So to make it the same, you have to find the LCD, the least common denominator. Okay, least common denominator. So to find the LCD, when you have two different denominators, I will just say, okay, take the two different denominators and multiply them together. So she end up with 2 times x minus 7. How do I end up with 2 times the factor x minus 7? You take the two different denominators, which is the first one is x minus 7, and you multiply by the other one, which is 2. So that is LCD. Okay, then there's two ways. The other way you could have done now, you could do, the next step is you can multiply every single term by the LCD, the least common denominator, to cancel out the division, the fraction by x minus 7, and for the other one by 2. Okay, but if you want, you can just make it the same denominator. So let's go step by steps. So the next step after finding the LCD, okay, you're going to make the denominator the same. Okay, so I will wrote the rational equation below. Okay, and since it's the numerator, some numerator and denominator we made of two terms, so I use the parentheses. So now I want each denominator to be 2 times x minus 7. So now the first denominator is just x minus the factor x minus 7. So what do I have to do to end up with the denominator of 2 times x minus 7? Okay, it gets it right, you multiply by 2. So and then whatever you do below, you have to do on top, so that the rational expression will remain the same. The number divided by itself is just 1. So you're not changing your expression, you're just rewriting in such a way that each term has now the same denominator. So now the next denominator is 2. So the common denominator is going to be 2 times x minus 7. So I'm missing the factor x minus 7. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by x minus 7. And here is just by 2. So now I'm going to multiply each term by multiply. So I'm going to rewrite the rational equation having the same LCD, the same denominator of 2 times x minus 7. Now, so they have the same denominator. Remember, to solve a rational equation, the goal is we want to get rid of the division by the by the LCD, which is 2 times x minus 7. Okay, so how do we do that? So again, in math, to undo division, we multiply. And you want to undo the division by 2 times factor of x minus 7. So what are you going to end up doing? you're going to multiply the entire equation by the LCD, which is 2 times x minus 7. So you're going to multiply every single term by the LCD. Why? So that the denominator of 2 times x minus 7 can be cancelled. Okay? Okay, so I multiply every term by the LCD. Remember, when you have a number divided by itself, so 2 by 2, 2 divided by itself is 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. X divided by x is simplified to 1. Okay, now you have 2 times x minus 7 divided by 2 times x minus 7, simplified to 1 whole. Okay, so you simplify to 1 to 1. So 2 times x minus 2 times the factor x minus 9 times 1 is going to be just 2. Okay, and this is a simplified rational equation. That's what we wanted. Okay, why? So now we have known denominator, or the denominator here is 1. So now you can use algebra to solve for x. Okay, so again, this is a long steps. You could have also done the other way you could have done is, since we found the LCD, okay, you could have multiplied the original equation by the LCD. Let me model this for you. Okay, so I rewrote the original equation here. Okay, so we have the LCD. We found the LCD, which is 2 times x minus 1. So x minus 7. So we're going to multiply everything by 2 times x minus 7. So it should be 2 here, x minus 7. Okay, so now as you multiply each term by 2 times the factor x minus 7, so here you have to be careful here. So the only factor by simplify, the only term by simplify is x minus 7. So you're left with 2, let me put a parenthesis, 2x minus 9 times 2. Do you see that? And the next one, the next term here, the 2 only simplify to 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So you're left with x times x minus 7. And the last one is the factor x minus 7 simplify. So you're left with 5 times 2, which is 10. Okay, so which is the exact same thing as we've done here. Okay, so the method I showed you earlier, we made the denominator the same. Then you multiply every term by the denominator to cancel the division by the denominator, and you end up with this, which match. So a faster way would have been also to multiply every single term by the LCD right away. Okay, you end up with the same expression, the same equation. Okay, so that's another way. So the next step is you're going now to distribute the 2, multiplication of 2, the x. Okay, so 2 times 2x is 4x, and 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. Now x times x is going to be x squared. So before I do anything, okay, let's see if I can combine any like terms. Like term, I term is the same variable or number by itself. So the only term on the left that I can combine is going to be 4x and negative 7x that add up to negative 3x. And then, don't forget the x squared, sorry. So it should be x squared minus negative 3x minus 18 equal 10. So I have a quadratic equation, and then I need to write it in standard form. To write it in standard form, okay, I need to move the 10 to the other side. I need the right side to be equal to 0. Okay, so to undo addition of 10, what do? We subtract 10 on both sides. So the new equation is going to be x squared minus 3x, okay, minus 28. So now the quadratic equation is leading coefficient to be 1. So I can write two empty factor like this, and write x inside. I cannot do I don't have to do the long way. Why? Because the number multiplied by x squared is 1. Okay, and we know that x times x is x squared. Next, I need to find two numbers that add to the middle term, negative 3, the coefficient of a middle term, and a times c, which is negative 28. Okay, Can you think of two numbers that multiply to negative 28 and add to negative 3? Okay, so it should be negative 7 and 4. So negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. And negative 7 plus positive 4 add up to negative 3. So when you find those two numbers, you plug it inside the factor form. Then you're going to apply the zero product property. You're going to take each factor and set it equal to 0 and solve for x. So here to solve for x, I need to do negative 7 by adding 7 on both sides. Here I have to subtract 4 on both sides. So the new equation is going to be x equal to 7. And here you're going to have x equal to 4. Now, remember that the restriction, at the beginning we say that the denominator cannot be equal to 7. Why? If we make so x cannot be equal to 7. Why? Because you make the denominator equal to 0. Okay, so we cannot have then 7 as a solution. Why? Because if we make the denominator equal to 0. So that's why I have to continue further and say, okay, x equal to 7, we call that is an extraneous. We call that in Algebra extraneous solution. Why do we call it an extraneous solution? Because it makes, because it makes the denominator equal to 0. So the only solution is the only solution is, so it cannot be x equals 7 because x equals 7 is the extraneous solution. So the only solution is x equal 4. Okay, so it cannot be this, so it has to be 4. Okay, so again, let's go over the steps. Okay, so the first step that we've done here, we restricted the domain. You want to find out what number we make the denominator equal to 0. How do we do that? We take the denominator, we set it equal not to 0, and you solve for x. So we know that x cannot be equal to 7, positive 7. Why? If we make the denominator equal to 0. Because 7 take away 7 is 0. Okay, identify. Now, after identifying the restriction, okay, you found the LCD, the least common denominator. And how do we find the least common denominator? Just take the two different denominator and multiply them together. Okay, and then you end up with 2 times x minus 7. Now, I show you two ways to simplify, to get rid of the fractions, the division. The first way, I say, okay, let's make the denominator the same as the LCD. And for each term, you identify what you have to do to make the denominator the same as the LCD. Then you multiply every single term by the LCD to undo the division by the denominator. Okay. And what I've showed you earlier was also to do what? Another faster way you will have done is you take the original equation and you multiply every single term by the LCD. Now you have to be careful that you simplify correctly, right? So here, the only factor to simplify is going to be x minus 7. Okay, so you're left with 2 times the factor of 2x minus 9, and so forth. So you have to be careful that you cannot just cross out. You have to cross out the number, the factor being repeated on top and below only. Okay, so that's what I've done. And you end up with this rational, now it's the equation, okay, a polynomial equation. How do we do that? So we undo the multiplication by multiplying, you undo the factor by multiplying, and then you combine the like terms, and you write the quadratic equation in standard form. Then we factored, and you apply the zero product property, and you solve for x. Now we notice that the restriction is x cannot be equal to 7. You find that x is equal to 7. So we have an extraneous solution. So it makes the denominator equal to 0. So the only solution here, is, give me a second, is x equal 4. Okay, so thank you for watching my video. I hope it was beneficial to you. Have a wonderful day and see you to the next one. Bye bye.